Hello everybody, I'm George from Ireland. So this video is going to be about Thanksgiving because here I am on the 400th Thanksgiving. I know I made a video about this a few days ago, but I thought, well, I've got to do it on the actual day. I did consider cycling to outside the United States Embassy to do it, but it's quite chilly and that was a bit out of my way. Anyway, so, well, what happened? It all dates back to 1620 when the Pilgrim Fathers set sail from the British Isles to America. Of course, they're planning to land in Virginia because since 1607 there'd been a permanent English settlement there, and so these immigrants, the Pilgrim Fathers, they were leaving England because, well, half of them belonged to religious minorities. Everybody in England was a Christian. Jews had been expelled from the country by this time. There were no Muslims, so far as I know, and if you were outside the established church, that was the Church of England, you would be discriminated against by law. They had briefly spent some time in Leiden, the Netherlands, trying to establish their community, but it didn't quite pan out for them. So one of their ship was the Mayflower, and navigation was rudimentary in the extreme back then, and as I say, they wished to make landfall on the colony of Virginia, but they only missed by a few hundred miles, and they ended up in what's now Massachusetts, and landing at a spot they called Plymouth Rock, because many of them had come from Plymouth. Now, only half of them there were pilgrims. Some of these immigrants were going for non-religious reasons to seek a better life, but they tended to be people who were really at the bottom of society because they were taking an enormous risk. This lengthy voyage across the wild ocean. Your ship could easily capsize, could strike a rock, you might be attacked by pirates or something, although I think once they were deep into the Atlantic there wasn't much chance of that. They could fall ill on the ship, scurvy ravaged the complement of ships, and there was really no hospital in America, and there was no doctor on board, and on, and so conditions were cramped and primitive, to say the least. One infant was born on that ship, and then they got to America, and soon another baby was born. There were a number of pregnant women on board. Imagine going on a voyage like that whilst heavily gravid. And I can't remember the child's name, but the first child of European stock who was born in Massachusetts, or indeed anywhere in New England. So soon they were in danger of perishing from famishment when some kindly disposed Native Americans emerged from the thick forest and proffered nourishment, and that saved these Pilgrim Fathers. So and then a year hence they called to mind this benefaction of these aliens, and they said, okay, we're going to give thanks to the Lord every day, rather than giving thanks to the Native Americans who had actually saved them. It might have been worth remembering, but not so many of English stock were always gratefully inclined towards the Native Americans, and so some of them made war upon the Native Americans, subjugated them, and sequestrated their land. And the surprising thing about Massachusetts is just how quickly it was settled. That Harvard was founded is about 16 years after that. The town of Boston built up and up. But so this is a time for Americans to make a big effort to be with their friends and kinsfolk, and to eat distinctively American foods like turkey, because of course turkey didn't exist in Europe till people started bringing them back in the 17th century. Drinking eggnog, but I suppose you can get eggs anyway. The alcoholic, non-alcoholic version. I have had since about 5 or whatever. What are the other originally American foods? I would say potatoes of any form, but they're originally from South America. Well, chocolate comes from the American continent. Can't think what else does. Tomatoes. People didn't have it. Oh yeah, pumpkins actually. Europe, we didn't have those, because like the Halloween heads, we used to carve those out of turnips. The Jack-o'-lantern tale from Ireland is about that guy having a head made from a turnip, not fashioned from a pumpkin. But after people brought pumpkins back from the New World, we started to fashion them out of pumpkins. They make rather better heads because they're much bigger. So, and countries which are very influenced by the United States, they also mark this honoured occasion. So there's a festival in Canada and the Philippines and elsewhere. But I know people often the real purpose of Thanksgiving is to fly to Cancun and disgrace yourself on Girls Gone Wild. I know that a lot of American football matches are there, parades and things like that. So the Pilgrim Fathers, they weren't necessarily against alcohol. They were in temperance. They obviously were against getting drunk, and they tended to wear very plain clothes, drab colours, black, grey, brown, white sometimes, no jewellery, against women wearing makeup or often had to cover their hair against even eating too much. You know, Christmas or all sorts of festivals were time for mainly praying, not for self-indulgence. So, yeah, that's that. It wasn't till, I think, the late 19th century that they settled upon the 4th Thursday in November as the occasion for Thanksgiving. So not necessarily the last Thursday of the month, because sometimes there are 5. And the following day is Black Friday, a blowout day for shopping. So it's a day of commercial self-indulgence. It begins the shopping feeding frenzy in the run-up to Yuletide. So I know that Friday is actually not a public holiday, but quite a lot of people are not working that day. If you can't be with your friends at or your family at Christmas, then at least do it on Thanksgiving. So a good time to crack open a few cans of beer and slump in front of the television. So how quintessentially American. Anything else? Well, oh yes, of course, that turkey in a cage is presented to the Commander-in-Chief of the White House when he pardons our feathered friend, rather than the person being sentenced to death. The only death row inmate ever pardoned by Donald Trump was an avian one. Yeah, Canada, they hold this celebration in October, simply to demonstrate that they are not Americans. But it generally perplexes some Americans to discover that it's not celebrated elsewhere. In fact, many non-Americans have never even heard of it. So here I'm in the United Kingdom right now, where it's only celebrated by Americans. It's not a public holiday. I recall meeting an American on a bus coming from Heathrow Airport 2 years ago today, and he remarked that, well, in the United States it's Thanksgiving, but here it's just Thursday, which is completely on the money. Yeah, I mean, because I haven't been to a Thanksgiving dinner since about 7, and asking someone about it several years ago, said, well, actually, go eat that food. There's nothing really happens. No speech or recital or whatever it is, a particular ceremony. There's no dance or anything like that. You don't have to wear a particular thing that people tend to dress up for it. So I'm not the best informed on Thanksgiving, but that's my penny's worth. That these illegal immigrants, as they were, the Native Americans, they will have had their own polities, their own laws, were not asked for permission by the Pilgrim Fathers before they made landfall on the American continent. So yeah, then the Native Americans in that area, Plymouth, they demonstrated how one had to cultivate crops there, and that's how they were saved. Although the death rate amongst the Pilgrim Fathers was appalling, but they managed to hang on, and obviously more people started coming out. So the Pilgrim Fathers, they thanked the Almighty for their deliverance, I suppose, which had come in the form of these well-disposed Native Americans who'd shown compassion to them, but not all white Americans were quite so merciful to the autochthonous race in the coming decades and centuries. All right, that's enough from me. So please donate with the greatest possible liberality on PayPal, and tell me what more videos you'd like to see. Toodaloo.